everyone, it's me, Crafty Witch. Welcome back to my channel. So glad you could pop by. So in today's video, I just want to talk about labels that we apply to ourselves in our own magical or spiritual path. And not so much the pros and cons, but just my own thoughts about it. And if you think differently, believe differently, that's okay. We don't need to think or believe the same way. I totally understand why people do use labels to identify themselves. That is something humanity has done since time immemorial. We've always liked to belong to a group, to have that sense of connection, that sense of belonging, that sense of community. And we do that in so many different areas in our life, and we always have as a way to, I guess, find like-minded people or similar people that are similar to us in some way, shape, or form. And we do that within the magical community as well. So with regards to the labels, for myself, what I've noticed is like, for instance, back in 2007 when I first started making videos, they're so bad, they're grainy as hell. They used to look a lot clearer back then, but anyway, I can remember back then there was a huge controversy that occurred within our YouTube pagan community over the term or the label Christian witch, and it sparked a lot of discussion, which is good. Discussion is always good. But at the same time, it also generated a lot of judgment and a lot of animosity and lack of support to those who did identify as being Christian witches back then. And I remember having subscribers back then reach out to me, and, you know, they weren't sure if, you know, is it okay that they use that term? You know, is it acceptable? They don't want to be judged. They were seeing what was going on within the pagan community here on YouTube at the time. And there was a lot of backlash within the pagan community over that particular label. Nowadays, 2021, people say you're a Christian witch. People are like, you know, for the most part. But that being said, do you find that these self-imposed labels, have they kind of pigeonholed you into a box, so to speak? And if so, are you comfortable with that? For myself, I've always despised labels for the most part. All my life, anytime people tried to, you know, pigeonhole me into a certain type of category, I would do whatever I could to rebel against that. My 3-year-old self comes to the surface, and I'm like, you're not the boss of me. I'm the boss of me, and I don't care what your expectations are of me. I'm gonna do me. I'm gonna do my own thing. Your approval is not needed. And I still carry that within myself. Like I said before, I understand wanting that sense of community, that sense of belonging, finding your own magical tribe. I get that. Yes, I do. At the same time, I find labels like that to also be very limiting. And in my case, I find it almost claustrophobic. I've seen what it can do in a very negative way with regards to people, I speak great English, but not even just in the magical or spiritual communities, but even in the work I do. I work in human services, and I've worked with kids that, you know, and adults that maybe they identified as being trans, and then they continue on with their journey, and then they find out that, you know what, actually that they've kind of outgrown that. Maybe they're actually non-binary, or maybe they're gender fluid, and they're, you know, they've changed, and they've come up with, you know, they let go of an old label that no longer suited them, and they've moved on to something else. And then I've seen the backlash that they've experienced within their schools, their communities, their families as well, even amongst their own friends and their peers. So it happens. And it happens within the pagan community. I find it restricting. I don't want to be just put into one little box and just labeled as a blah 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 witch. You know, I'm for myself, I use the term witch or pagan, and I don't like to really subdivide it any further than that. I don't see the need for it. I understand that people might belong to a specific tradition, and you know, maybe they're very proud of that, to be connected to that, and you know, or it might be like, oh well, what kind of witch are you, or you know, what tradition, what path do you follow, or whatever. And if it's done in such a way to promote growth, learning, sharing, spiritual evolution, stuff like that, fine. I think that's wonderful and great, and that's very healthy. But if it's done as a way to generate bigotry or exclusion, or trying to establish a hierarchy, because unfortunately we have that within the pagan community too. You know, you get certain branches of paganism that will look down their noses at other branches of paganism, and the amount of ridicule is insane. And it's just like, these are supposed to be adults and they're acting like they're in grade 3, you know, or grade 7 or whatever. They're acting like whatever it is. It's like just the amount of judgment and ridicule, the lack of support. And it's like, you know what? Just because somebody uses one particular label and maybe you don't connect with that label and it doesn't resonate with you, that's okay. Maybe you don't like that label. You don't need to like it. But your approval isn't needed, and your judgment of the person that is using that label is also not needed. And I think people need to maybe check themselves before they wreck themselves, because it's like, where do people get off thinking that their particular branch of paganism, whatever that is, or branch of witchcraft, is more superior than another person's? It's not. It's just not. It's no better and no worse than any other belief system or practice that's out there, whatever it is. If you want to be a Christian witch, all the more power to you. You want to be a satanic witch, all the more power to you. You want to be a sea witch, go ahead. If you want to be a cosmic witch, a elemental witch, a hedge witch, a green witch, a kitchen witch, if you want to be, you know, follow the straight path, go for it. If you want to be whatever tickles your pickle, go for it. That being said, if somebody else is on a different path than yours, or maybe they're using the same term that you're using, but their ways of doing things are different, doesn't mean you have any authority to cast judgment on somebody else. And for me, that's, I identified labels as judgment, and probably because I've been judged by labels my whole life, right? And I rebel against the usage of labels. I find it very limiting. I really believe in allowing yourself to have that room to grow, to learn, to explore, to evolve in all aspects of your life, of your being. And if you confine yourself to a little tiny finite label of being a yada yada witch versus a blah 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 witch, I think you're doing yourself a disservice, possibly. You might experience backlash from the community, which nobody has the right to even throw that at you. Uh, and then, but the saddest thing, I've seen this, like I said, back in 2007, but I've seen this within people that used a certain label and they felt confident at first with that particular label. And maybe they were just kind of starting off onto a certain path, and they're still learning and they're growing, and then they face hostility and ridicule and judgment and, you know, all this stuff, negative stuff from people within their own community, and just that lack of support. And then they start to question their own path, and they start to question maybe the term they've chosen to identify with. And maybe at first it really resonated with them, and now this seeds of doubt have been planted in their mind, like, well, you know, maybe I'm just starting out on this path, and maybe I'm using the wrong term, and oh no, like, you know, I don't mean to offend or upset anybody, and I just felt that this was what my path was. And maybe they're young, and maybe they're a meek, mild person, and they're not the type of person that is comfortable with confrontation or that kind of thing, or arguing or defending themselves. Maybe they've experienced their own traumas, and that just freaks them out. And then you get some, you know, person with a really, you know, burly type of personality and just steamrolls over this person, you know, trying to spew out facts and this and that and whatever the case might be. And this person just clams up, and instead of opening and blossoming more, it's like they close inwards, and then they start to doubt themselves and their path. And I think that's horrendous. And like the bullying that happened or has happened, and still does happen, certain groups I belong to, if somebody comes in there and if they say they're Wiccan, oh my goodness, the eye rolls, the judgment, the mocking, the ridicule. And it's like, wow, y'all are bullies, you guys are assholes. Why are we like that to our own pagan community? You know, as a whole, a lot of us has faced discrimination, in various forms. As a history, as a kind of a collective history, there's been a lot of discrimination, right? You know, practices had been outlawed or illegal. People were, you know, this and that, maybe fired from jobs or had their kids taken away, or God knows, all kinds of stuff, right? And then we think we can turn around and ridicule another group of pagans just because they're different from the way we are, because of a label, right? So for me, I've got an issue with labels. I really do. I've been labeled my whole life. I've been called everything from squaw to wagon burner to kraut to Nazi to you name it. My ancestry is extremely mixed. And I hated that. You know, being told, well, you know, that's so unladylike, you shouldn't swear. Oh yeah, okay, so you expect me to be a lady? Well, I'm gonna swear like a sailor. You know, like I rebel against stuff like that. I don't like labels. I don't like having people have these. If I say I connect with this or that, or identify as being this or that, then that's almost like giving the other person permission to have like these expectations of you to behave or to act in a certain way. And I don't think that we should have those expectations of other people. We should expect things from ourselves, absolutely, but you know, if I don't measure up to those expectations, or if I, you know, veer off from what they expect of me, you know, is that going to cause drama or an issue? Versus if I just say I'm pagan, or if I just say I'm a witch, I feel like maybe that I'm more free to do what I want, when I want, how I want. Of course, I'm free to do that anyway, but I just find that the label on top of that is just kind of restricting. You know what I'm saying? Do you get what I'm saying? um I don't feel the need to like subdivide it and subdivide it and keep subdividing it all the time. um but some people do. They find it more comforting. They, you know, might really like that. I just don't like being pigeonholed into a small little box of like, this is what it is and this is all you're allowed to be, and you got to stay in that box. That makes my skin crawl. Is there anybody else out there that gets what I'm saying or has experienced kind of what I'm talking about? If so, please do a video response. I would really love to kind of open up discussion about it. I like I get wanting to have the sense of community and having a term or a label in order to kind of, I guess, find like-minded folks. I understand that. I respect that. But I guess what I'm saying is leave room for yourself to grow, to learn, and to evolve in all areas of your life so that you aren't pigeonholed into that particular label. So that if you choose to use that label or term as a part of your expression of your own spiritual or pra- magical practice, fine, but leave some wiggle room for yourself so that, you know, if you want to expand beyond that label, don't doubt yourself and don't wonder if it's okay. Absolutely, it's okay. You can continue to learn, to grow, and, you know, to leave things behind that no longer suit you, and labels are one of those things. So that's just my thoughts. You guys want to share? You guys want to let me know what you guys think? I would love to hear what you think about that. So that's it for now. Wish you guys all the best. Stay safe out there. I love you. Ciao.